Hi, welcome back for another episode of Let's Talk About It. I've got a great episode for you lined up today, a conversation that I had with Chip Bircher. He is the CTO of SOFTwarfare, and he brings 28 years of experience in the US Army to our conversation about identity-centric threats. We talked about everything from the military and cyber connection to man-in-the-middle attacks, session hijacking, MFA bombing, behavioral analytics, and much more. So you're going to want to stay tuned for this great episode. And without further ado, let's get into it. I'm joined with Chip Bircher. Welcome to the podcast, Chip. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I'm excited to be here.
A little birdie LinkedIn told me that you are a former US Army vet. So could you tell me a little bit more about your background and what brought you to where you're at today?
Sure. So my origin story, it's not nearly as exciting as the new Fantastic Four movie. So I spent 28 years in the Army. Started as an infantry officer, switched over to military intelligence. I spent some years at the National Security Agency as a strategic planner there. I was getting ready to get out of the Army. I was done with it. There's a friend of mine and reached out and said, "Hey, there's this new thing called information operations. I know you like computers. You might want to look into it." I looked into it and thought it looked intriguing. And the next 20 years of my career were spent doing information operations and information warfare for the Army. So it's everything you can do and everything you could use information for to change what people think, believe, perceive, ultimately to change behavior without having to shoot at them, which is kind of a good thing. Um, Along the way, I did a couple tours in Afghanistan. I where I led information operations and then was helped lead the strategic communication effort there, and then got tasked to build a couple of programs for the Army. The first was to create the Army's electronic warfare program, so standing up the Army's career field for electronic warfare using electromagnetic spectrum capabilities to both attack our adversaries' use of the spectrum and then to defend our own use of the spectrum. So very much what you're seeing in Ukraine right now and Russia, and that war is playing out. We started to build out for the U.S. Army back in oh 20 literally 20 years ago. And then that became the Army's cyberspace operations proponent and career field. So both offensive, defensive, and exploitation of cyberspace. That's kind of led into that. How do you defend networks while also preventing other people from attacking your network? It's an active defense concept. And then ran up my last 5 years in the Army. I led the Army's information operations, career field, and capability creation organization. Probably the coolest thing I did in that last period was Ukraine had been invaded by Russia in the second time in 2000. Let's see, it would have been like 2014, 2015. And it was after the Crimean invasion. This was the first invasion of the eastern Ukraine, and I was able to lead the first group of Americans into eastern Ukraine, and looking at what Russia was doing to attack Ukrainian soldiers, attack their families with information, and then how to protect themselves. Make some recommendations to the Army. Um, so that was probably the a great way to end on. I retired. I went into work in the financial services industry, working helping an insurance business unit for one of the Fortune 100 companies uh, go through transformation, not just technology transformation, but also an organization and cultural transformation, and understanding that if you don't do the three of them together, then generally it doesn't turn out so well for you. And went into some consulting, and then I met this guy named Wyatt Cobb, who had stood up this uh, pretty cool uh, cyber defense software manufacturer called SOFTwarfare. He let me take the tech for a test drive, and it was really cool. And he hired me to be a CTO, and been here about 18 months now. So there is a very long-winded origin story for you.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you along the way there,
Yeah.
what percentage of people do you think coming out of the US Army go into cybersecurity? It seems like
Uh,
100.
you would, well, percentage wise, not a lot.
Really?
Oh yeah, well, you've got to think there's probably,
So many
uh,
aspects
yeah,
of, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
just there's so much action. But I think if you think of, if you put it into perspective of capability and understanding, we're a pretty small company. 10% of our workforce is former military,
Yeah.
because of the nature and the fact that the heart of cybersecurity comes out of the Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
We all talk about CISA, and we all talk about NSA, and we all talk about DARPA, and these organizations that are at the forefront of creating cybersecurity innovation. Well, they're all military defense organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, very interesting. It's because my network of security professionals skews very high in military, obviously. So then
really.
I'm like, it just seems like a natural progression for military people
Yeah,
to go into cyber. But yeah.
but I think it is, and I think there's also an understanding that once you leave the military, it's okay to leave the military. And sometimes folks that's a harder part of the transition than
Hmm.
the actual skill set is.
Hmm. For sure. Okay, but that's not what we're here to talk
Okay,
about today.
that's Nick's.
So let's
That's
get
Nick's
into it.
podcast.
All right. Yeah, let's get
Yeah.
into it. Okay, so identity-centric threats. I have some
Yes.
questions about this. And first, I think we've got to
Okay.
step back out to the edges of the box in order to get into the middle and
Yeah.
understand what kind of identity telemetry, identity signals we're looking for, we're collecting, we're interested in. Let's start there.
Yeah. So I would step even farther back than
Oh,
that. Okay.
okay.
So think about your threat. Okay. And here's the ex-Intel guy, coming out. Think about your threat today. Okay. Growing up, when I was cutting my teeth at NSA, the threat was not necessarily what I call the big four butt heads. It was, and I'll explain this in a minute. It was more script kiddies. It was more young people. It was more, one-offs. And then some nation state actors, primarily the Soviet Union at the time. Okay, the threat today is a lot more complex. You've got the four butt heads: Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. All of them that are deliberately attacking U.S. and international infrastructure. Okay, for but for different reasons. Okay, in a holistic overview way, you've got North Korea desperate for revenue, so they're coming after you with malware and with ransomware to try and find a way to get money. They need money because they can't feed their population. They also need technology because they do have a fledgling nuclear power, and they need a military to keep their population in line. So they're trying to steal technology there as well. But that's their primary. It's theft. Okay, China especially, intellectual property theft, information theft, and corruption of information, corruption of our international and our domestic information environment. Okay, using our information and using information to affect what we see, what we think, what we believe in order to change our behavior or to hurt us in our behavior. Russia, absolutely. It's all about information warfare. It's about cognitive warfare, non-kinetic warfare. They are coming after us to attack our nation and to erode trust in the West's societal upbringings. Okay, it really is a holistic form of warfare. And then Iran, more along kind of in the middle. They're really focusing on intellectual theft, but they're also focusing on just sowing dissension. Okay, so those are the four big butt heads. Then you've got everybody else that wants to attack into your system. And the issue is that socks are overloaded. Okay. A sock is overloaded. They are drowning in these alerts, and they're coming from different security tools, EDRs and NDRs, and they're cloud posture management. You've got email gateways, all of this information coming into a sock. That the fundamental problem is that these alerts are disjointed. Right? And how the SOC manages that and is able to analyze and assess that is absolutely crucial in order to get a coherent study. So you wind up getting alert fatigue, slow prioritization, you get delayed responses, all of these issues that come in that are just not good, right? So that's the environment that we're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with. So now we're
Yeah.
talking about the telemetry. So what does all of this identity information look like? We can track and know individuals based on their identity traits. I am a white male. I live in Kansas City, former military, all these things you can know about me. I'm left-handed, right? I normally park in a specific parking spot. I get to work at uh 6 o'clock in the morning. Why, how do you know that? Because I badge in through the turnstile. We know that I always park in one spot and it takes me 37 seconds to walk from my car to the front door. How do you know? Because we have closed caption television for individual security in our parking garages. We know that I go scan in through the front door. I go to the turnstile, scan in. I go to the elevator and I scan in so I can go to the 29th floor of the building in order to go to my desk. I go to my desk. The first thing I do is log in with my preferred biometric. And because I work for a company that really believes in high security multi-factor authentication through biometrics, that my preferred biometric is my voice print. And I get up, go get a cup of coffee, come back. First thing I do is go check the box scores and see how the Royals did last night. Okay, so that's things you know about me based on information, available information. I often talk to people about how much of that information is going into your security operations center
Mm-hmm.
because it's not traditional network security information.
Yeah.
It's an integrated feed of behavioral analysis of the user or entity behaviors, how they act, and physical security feeds. So we know all this about our employees, but we don't necessarily bring it into a holistic view of the package. The telemetry tree can go be off the chart. All that information is readable, and we can look at gait recognition. We can look at all the different things. So why is Chip now logging in from? It says he's logging in from Kansas, but his phone says he's in Dubuque, Iowa. That's weird. Why is Chip logging in at 4 in the morning? Why is Chip uh, not using his voice? Why is Chip using his thumbprint? Now the SOC can start to do analytics and maybe put him in a box and look at a step-up authentication or do a liveness test. Push a something to his phone that says you have to please read these four green words instead of the whole thing. There are ways to take the risk and bring it back to an acceptable level.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. Yeah, I have so many questions. No, okay, this is great. So
Mm-hmm.
let's see. When you have this data that you're collecting,
Yeah,
right? And it's all of these things that you're
yeah.
saying that can be connected to a individual person, right? Let's think of a
Mm-hmm.
traditional SOC and or a traditional security infrastructure, right?
Yeah,
Of like a regular size enterprise.
yeah,
Not everybody is going to have enough money to be collecting, maintaining, storing all of this
yeah.
identity information, things that are go beyond, your traditional IOCs like your IP,
Yeah.
your hash, whatever. So, how do you find the level of collecting that right information, balancing the cost and maintenance, and still
Hmm.
getting what you need to get to enrich these alerts?
I would ask a leader, or I'd ask whoever's in charge of the organization, where company, team, business unit, SOC, what is your level of risk tolerance?
Hmm.
Okay. How much risk are you willing to accept? And when I've done this in the past, and when I've helped organizations build out their security apparatus in the past, and I asked that question, and inevitably, none. We want you to eliminate all of your risk. We have zero trust. We have a zero trust approach to them. Great. I can eliminate 100% of the risk in any business. Turn out the lights, unplug your computers, and do everything manually. Only sell by writing longhand. And that usually doesn't go over so well. Okay. Then I say, okay, well, are you willing to accept that your employees that you have hired good, honorable people? You'd be surprised how many people won't even accept that. Let's just say that D3 and SOFTwarfare have really, we got good, honorable people we've hired. But then, okay, What about their devices? What about the permissions you have them authenticated? We talked about alert overloads for SOC problems. There's this blind spot that you can help eliminate on lateral movements. That somebody comes in, somebody steals your credentials, and then can get in and move laterally, and that's often hard for a SOC to track. By understanding identity context, we can help the SOCs do that. When you look at how all of this information is correlated and how you use that to eliminate the risk, how it comes together to paint a bigger picture. You need the old adage of who, what, when, where, why, and how matters to a SOC. It matters to the identity and access management system. Who is logging in? Okay. What's the typical behavior? What does that look like? What devices are they using? Did Chip get a new phone? That's interesting. Okay, where are they accessing resources from? Am I accessing from an IPN or an IP or a VPN? Am I accessing from on-site, on-prem? Is it through the cloud? All of that matters. Where are you getting your alerts? EDRs, networks, cloud, email, all that. And then why? Who, what, when, where, and how, and why. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Amy going to the HR system? Even though you have access to it, you've never you have permissions to see it, you're authorized to see it. Amy's never accessed that system since she worked here. Why now? Those are the questions we can help in order to manage that risk and get it to an acceptable level.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I have questions about the
Mhm.
behavioral analysis of how
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit more about the why in general as well.
Okay.
So let's say, okay, I've got to evaluate my risk tolerance, right?
Uh-huh.
But with all of the risk in cybersecurity, in the ever-evolving landscape of cybersecurity, um,
Yeah.
why is identity-centric risks and threats important to focus on in today's, actual threat landscape? As
Yeah.
opposed to, why would I not focus on endpoint detection or,
Yeah.
something else?
Yeah, you can't ignore it. So that's the beauty of this is you can't just ignore endpoint detection. You can't just ignore firewalls. You can't ignore uh, any of the legacy systems. But I'll tell you, you can look at what's in the news now. You can look at what's happening. Identity breaches are the easiest way and the most lethal way to come in to get after someone. So attackers aren't just going up against network perimeters. They've realized that the easiest path is and the easiest way to get into a system is to steal identities or to compromise credentials. Um, that it really is that new battleground that the SOC is having to deal with. Um, Everything else is still critical, but it's just, the traditional network, traditional endpoint visibility but it's just not enough on its own. Attackers are now bypassing these legacy defenses. Okay. And they're doing it by stealing your credentials. Um, it's a stealth weapon. Once they have the credentials stolen, they can grant initial access. Then they're able to move laterally and they can go dormant. They can sit there for months or years and remain undetected for extended periods. And it's just a nightmare that SOC are now relying on fragmented data. They're relying on old endpoint logs and they're shooting behind the eight ball. They're shooting behind the target instead of attacking the target. We talked about kind of the legacy security methods. Some of the attack vectors we're seeing man in the middle, where phishing attacks that can intercept credentials and session tokens, session hijacking, where the attackers actually can take over your session, and then MFA push fatigue, so MFA bombing. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's one. Just I keep hearing we talk about it all the time at work, MFA bombing, MFA bombing, and I think about that from this, how many times would I have to get an MFA logon permission before I said enough of this, just do it. Okay, I approve it. Wow, but it's happening. And the whole premise behind zero trust is that's just it. You don't trust anybody.
Yeah.
It's not a buzzword.
Yeah.
This is a strategic imperative. I wrote a blog and it's on my LinkedIn post a little while ago on my LinkedIn site about buzzword bingo, in the cybersecurity world. Zero trust is like your center square now,
Hmm.
but it means you have to always. It's not just initial at login. You have to do continuous authentication and continuous verification of every user, every device, every software that comes into your system. Um,
Yeah, that part, okay, that part scares
yeah.
me. The behavioral part, the continuous authentication part. Now, on the one hand, I understand why we need this
Mhm.
because, there's attacks like
Yeah.
downgrade attacks where people are socially
Yeah.
engineering a way to bypass your MFA entirely. Then what are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. Look
Um,
at the MGM attack a couple years ago.
yeah, so then you need to know what employees are doing, have a baseline of their activities so that you can be like,
Yeah.
oh, this doesn't match what I think that this employee is usually doing. On
Yeah.
the flip side, as an employee, I'm like, please
Mhm.
don't look at what I'm doing. And what if I decide
Yeah.
one day that, I don't want to check the sports, whatever, and I
Yeah.
want to go online shopping in the morning very briefly when I sit down
Yeah.
at my desk? Like, what happens when I decide to change my behavior slightly because I'm
Yeah.
erratic?
That's okay. And I would expect that's called human nature, right?
Yeah.
I woke up this morning and I needed to do something that was outside my normal pattern of life, my normal episode. But it was still, I needed to log on and, like you said, I needed to, I don't know, buy a new monitor or something. So I did that from work. Well, the that's okay. And you can, instead of just saying, "Oh my God, the world's falling," shut them down, attack, go go rip their credentials away. Put either a virtual or a physical alert. We've had clients that want don't want they want a man in the middle, a human in the loop. So instead of boxing out somebody as you investigate it, they want to notify a human, either supervisor or somebody from the SOC, to go investigate and see what's happening personally, so that you have a human making that choice. We have other clients that want to use our AI platform that says, "Hey, Chip's boxed in. We're now going to have Chip do what's called step-up authentication. You logged in with your voice. Now we want you to go ahead and log in with your facial recognition, or log in with your fingerprint,
Mm.
or do a liveness test where we push 5 words to your phone and say, please read the 3 purple ones." And it can be instantaneous. It can be pretty seamless. And say, you know what, Amy was just checking the HR system to find the process for requesting vacation time.
hmm I guess my biggest concerns would be privacy on one hand
Yeah.
and business interruption on the other. Like,
Yeah.
what if I'm doing something, checking HR, and then you lock me out, and I've got
Yeah.
to spend an hour getting back in, communicating with you, figuring it out.
Yeah.
It's a huge waste of my time.
Yeah.
And then we've got the privacy concerns, where on the
Mhm.
other hand, the IT person is like, "Hey, Amy, I
Yeah.
noticed you logged into my HR system," and I'm like, "What? Get out of here!"
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that just about every company I've ever worked for, including the US government, has this disclaimer when you first turn on the computer that says, please notice this system and the system is the property
hmm
of Bill's cybersecurity shop, and all of everything you do it is subject to monitoring. And okay, it's kind of terms of employment these days.
Yeah. But social norms though, I don't feel
Yeah.
that it's normal for a company to be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, what were you doing in the system this morning?"
Well,
It's
I
a
think
bit like
that's
micromanaging, no?
it absolutely is. But it's also every
hmm
SOC, I think, kind of knows everything. You should know everything you're doing on the networks,
Yeah.
and whether you're doing it within the parameters of your job. Uh, there's that
Yeah.
risk tolerance.
Very
Um,
interesting.
yeah, that's probably another blog or another podcast we could talk about. What's acceptable risk behavior.
Yeah. And I guess
So,
like how many SOC teams are so robust that they have the capacity to investigate these alerts
yeah,
that are,
they're not.
yeah,
They're not. That's
exactly.
just it. That's just it. And that's why I think you've got SOC overload and SOC fatigue. I think if you look at the approach we've taken is that rather than having the SOC have to investigate it, our recommendation is to use our, we call it UEBA, user and entity behavior analytics, use our UEBA and our risk engine on the front end to create that risk tolerance and that risk profile that says, hey, Chip normally has it based on all of his behavior. Chip's risk, we'll do a risk scoring based on all the information, all the identity telemetry that comes in, all of the feeds we're able to connect SOCs with, and be able to connect into a true analytics engine, and say that engine is, risk chips risk score is normally a 20 out of a scale of 1 to 100. Okay, well, behavioral activity can cause that risk score to go up or down. Chip's been with the company for 30 years. Chip's high, he's very dependable. He's whatever. His risk tolerance is going to be up to 50.
Mm-hmm.
Bill's been with the company, is brand new, so his risk tolerance may be up to 25, a
Mm-hmm.
score. So when it gets to that point of that risk tolerance causing the trigger, then you have the step up authentication where it
Yeah.
can be it's automatic,
Yeah.
and it's, hey, why are you doing this?
Yeah. No, that makes so much more sense than what I was envisioning as well, because
Yeah.
like there's never
Yeah.
going to be a trigger for my
No.
Amazon purchase.
No.
So really my triggers are more like you're saying the IP
Yeah.
address is not matching to where the phone location is to whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes
Okay.
sense. All right, cool.
All right. Well, go ahead and you keep doing your Amazon
Okay, cool.
homework.
Okay, okay. Nobody tell IT.
Exactly.
No, they already know it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, that was great. Chip, where can we find what you're working on online?
Wow. Probably two biggest places are, just our software for LinkedIn site, and then obviously our website. We got a couple things we're doing with IDXDR coming out, and how we combine identity information into XDRs, and being able to bridge that gap. So we're excited about that. Then I continue to, on my own LinkedIn post site, use that. I think it's Chip-Bircher, and
All right.
then use that to bridge into SOFTwarfare. And then SOFTwarfare, we are pretty active in the Armed Forces Communication and Electronics Association, very active in the Army Association of the United States Army. The Army is having a data summit right now that we're the one of the premier sponsors for. So all of that is about creating a better defense for the United States and our allies and partners, but also taking that technology and those capabilities we develop and then bringing them into the commercial marketplace.
For
Okay.
sure. All right. I will put all those links in the show notes for everybody. And
Well,
so check Chip out on LinkedIn and check out the company page. And we'll see y'all next time.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Amy.